Welcome, sinners. Welcome back to the third episode of our podcast. I am once again your host, Easter, and we have begun a series, a 7-part series, discussing the 7 deadly sins. Last week we discussed the sin of pride, but this week we are going to discuss the sin of wrath. And everybody knows what wrath is. You know, it is basically somebody who does not have a control over their anger. And somebody who doesn't have control over their anger, it's going to make you do things that you're going to regret. It's going to make you make the wrong choices in life. Like one example is, let's say you're driving down the road somewhere and somebody cuts you off. That happens to a lot of people. And, usually people will, yell obscenities or, shoot them the bird, and, sometimes people do stuff like that without thinking. And it usually makes the other person angry, and sometimes they might try to chase you down and hurt you or something. And because you didn't have a control over your emotions, now, you'll have to deal with, the aftermath, whatever that is. Anyway, but yeah, to really overcome wrath, you really have to have a lot of patience. And that's not a lot of things that people have nowadays, because everybody is so impatient. And not a lot of people have control over their emotions, and it is a little sad. But hey, people believe different things. They believe different things, they think differently about everything, and that's normal. But anyway, back on topic. Somebody who doesn't have control over their anger, it'll make them make the wrong choices in life, and you have to make the correct choices in life, to wherever you want to go. But anger, if you're too angry about something, that's going to make you do a lot of horrible things in life. People do a lot of things when they're angry, and sometimes they don't realize it until after they've already done it. And it is sad. That's why also, if you're going through something in life, going through a tough time, it happens to everybody. That's why you have to have friends to help you. If you have friends in this world, you're never alone. You need somebody to help you get through tough situations, so you don't let your anger get a hold of you. Because, hey, anger makes people do a lot of crazy things. Like, some people are impatient, waiting behind somebody in the checkout line. They might be, the customer might be taking too long with coupons or whatever. And I'm thinking, so what? It's with coupons. There's lots of other things to worry about in life than somebody in front of you in the checkout line taking too long with their coupons. That's another example of somebody getting too angry. But hey, you know what? Who cares? That's what express checkout lines are for. So you don't have to wait as long. Okay, I think that's, basically enough to say about wrath. I mean, there's a lot of different things we could talk about, but the most important thing before we leave today is, don't let your emotions get a hold of you. I understand there's a lot of tough situations in life, but, just sit down, take a deep breath, count to 3. It does help. That way you can have a clear mind to make your decisions. But if you don't, if you let your emotions get a hold of you, then you will be down here in hell with us, and we will have an awfully good time. But anyway, thank you, sinners, so much for tuning in today and listening to our podcast. If you are new, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel, and leave a nice, fun comment. I would love to read all of them. Thank you so much, sinners, and until next time.